Today we're going to be talking about VertiPaq in Microsoft Power BI. We're going to briefly cover what it is and briefly cover how it works. And then we're going to be talking about how it impacts DAX performance and just kind of a quick high-level overview. After that, we're going to dive deep into an AI solution that I built to try and help me write better DAX. Does it work? Well, you're going to have to stay tuned to just a little later in the video to find out. That said, I need to introduce myself. My name is Ned. I'm a Microsoft MVP with a focus on Power BI, and today we're going to get pretty technical. If you're interested in videos like these or business intelligence in general, consider giving this video a thumbs up and then hitting the subscribe button. All right, let's jump to the computer and let's start learning. So first, just to get this out of the way, we're only going to be talking about this in terms of Power BI import mode, not direct query or direct lake, because they both function a little bit differently. That said, let's start somewhere simple. What is VertiPaq? Well, VertiPaq is the analytical engine behind analysis services and the analysis services engine that supports Power BI semantic models. So simply put, it is the engine that makes Power BI work. It is an in-memory columnar storage engine. So what does that actually mean? Well, let's just say that we have this table right here that contains a kid's name, an age, and their favorite color. Power BI, instead of storing, or VertiPaq, instead of storing this individual row as a collective entity, will optimize the data by compressing columns instead of rows. And it creates internal row IDs to track the position of the data that was split into columns. So instead of storing Alex, age 5, favorite color blue, what it will do is it will store a name column, an age column, and a color column. And it will maintain the position using its own internal row IDs. But that's not the only trick VertiPaq has up its sleeve. It also uses something called dictionary encoding. So let's take, for example, this color column, which might have the color blue in it multiple times. What it will instead do, instead of storing the word blue, is create essentially kind of a lookup value. So instead of storing blue, it will store 1. Then it will have a dictionary that translates away from its code to the actual value that is in the model. This saves space because instead of storing blue 2 times, it only stores blue once, and then, for example here, the number 1. So if you are then in Microsoft Power BI and you're interacting with the visual, what it's going to do is it's going to create a DAX query. That DAX query will then be passed off to the formula engine, which will create a plan as to the best way to retrieve that data, which will then be handed off to the storage engine or VertiPaq to retrieve it, who will then return the data in a data cache fully reassembled. So if we're wanting to optimize a DAX query that Power BI is executing, what we need to understand is how much time was spent in the formula engine, which I realize I didn't cover, but is essentially what builds the retrieval plan, and how much time was spent by VertiPaq actually retrieving the data. And if you optimize both of these, you can produce an optimized DAX query. Now, the easiest way that you can tell how much time a query is spending in the storage engine is by executing a trace. There are events that are logged every single time that you execute a trace event. How you calculate how much time was spent in the formula engine is by taking the total amount of time the query took to execute and subtracting the total amount of time that the storage engine spent to execute, and the remainder is the amount of time that was spent by the formula engine. Now, there's numerous tools, including DAX Studio and even Semantic Link Labs, which is what I'm showing you now, that can execute a trace and clear out a data cache. That way, when you execute the trace, it doesn't pull the data from an existing cache that was already built. Once you have that trace, what you can then do is you can look for events that mark the beginning and the end of the DAX query being executed, and then events that mark the beginning and the end of the storage query or storage engine query being started and executed. What you can then do is you can simply parse this and produce a data frame. And I used AI to generate a method to do this parsing, and I'll link this Fabric notebook down below in the video description. But what this gives you is a total elapsed time that the DAX query took to execute, the total amount of time in the storage engine, and then you can back your way into the total amount of time spent in the formula engine by subtracting the storage engine time from the total time. Now, this tells you where your DAX is spending the most amount of time. Is it spending its time retrieving data, or is it spending time essentially figuring out the best way to retrieve that data? In general, you almost always want to optimize for more storage engine time, but that brings me to my AI solution, which is an agent skill that I built called DAX Optimize. This skill is primarily powered by a PowerShell script that the AI can use and send commands to pull out model definitions, as well as execute query traces to understand how much time a given measure is spending in the formula engine versus the storage engine. The hope is that the AI can use this skill to, at the very least, provide the end user with an understanding of whether or not the DAX that it generated is any good. So let me show you how this works, and then we're going to talk about some problems with this. So I can go DAX optimize, and I can say optimize the measure better or worse prior month. Now, I do have a Power BI data set open, so this agentic skill should be smart enough to recognize that it needs to connect to any open Power BI file and then identify the measure, which is what it does and is what it's asking me for permission to do. So I'm going to just switch this from allow to allow all commands in this session. And what we should do is we should see it find the measure, then start to optimize it. So it's going to ask me how I want to understand its optimized measure definition. And for now, I'm just going to choose chat. And then it's going to ask me if I want to have it return the timings or filings, which I didn't. Then it's going to execute the measure as a DAX query against the model, and it's going to summarize those results. If it has any recommended changes that it wants, it's going to ramp up a secondary model in a different model family than it's actually using, and it's going to ask that sub-agent model to essentially understand if what I just provided as a measure was any good. That sub-agent is going to give its feedback back to the original AI agent, and if they disagree on anything, what they're going to go ahead and do is query the Microsoft Learn documentation for any additional information. So that's probably what's happening now. As you can see, we now are getting a result, and it did come back with a suggested rewrite. As you can see, the original model was GPT Codex. It ramped up Claude Sonnet to essentially provide a review. Here's how that query performed, right? But it said the runtime, the formula engine was 90% of the total. So this pattern is formula engine bound and will regress as visual complexity grows. It then recommended a rewrite and then provided me some documentation to learn about why its rewrite makes sense. So what are the problems with this? Well, first of all, it's non-deterministic, which means I might rerun this one more time and I might get completely different feedback from the LLM around what was performant. The other thing is just because I have performance tuning brought in, it still doesn't stop me or the LLM for that part just writing bad DAX or hallucinating. So is this tool useful? Probably, but is it going to solve all of your problems? Probably not. And I'll link this skill down below just so you can go ahead and you can check it out. And if you made it this far, you're now at the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, maybe consider watching one of the ones that YouTube is recommending for you somewhere down over here. If not, give this one a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll catch you in the next one. Talk to you later.